Hi. There we go. Uh, I adore watching all of the chat just kind of fill up. It always just gives me a lot when it's before the stream even starts. Folks, it is Friday. There's no Punchy today, unfortunately. So it's me. You get me. That's what you get. And thankfully we had some cool questions thrown at us this way, so I'm just going to give people a few moments to settle in here to come on in, and then we are going to get started. In the meantime, I'm going to reveal something that's a little bit special. For our Exalted campaign that we've just recently started, I allowed myself a little luxury, and I got a new set of our safety cards. So the old safety cards have done very well for themselves, and honestly, they are still just fine. I imagine that to you, they would look just the same as any other would. The thing, though, is using these are made of plastic. We ordered them from Make Playing Cards, which gives you different options. We set these to be plastic cards as opposed to cardboard cards, and the thing is, they do over the course of time, they're very durable. Like, they're very even hard to fold to the point where then they don't stay properly, but they do kind of collect some dings and scratches over the years as you use them a whole bunch. So I had a couple of packs spare, and so I'm using fresh ones. If only that it just makes me feel a little bit better knowing that new campaign, new things. But these are honestly, they're like trucks. I really didn't have to, but I did anyway, just because they've got a bit of finger oil on them. If you don't know, they come in a pack like this. If you order them from Make Playing Cards, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sets that come in the pack, along with one tiny little information card that says how it's used. So that's the best option for you if you don't live in the United States. If you do live in the United States, you can order them from Drive-Thru Cards, which is a little bit cheaper, I think, in terms of the shipping costs for you. But regardless, you can just download them from our website and print them out yourselves. It's free. And we make a total of 1 penny of profit on all of the ones that are sold, because they didn't let us take 0 as a profit margin. So that's kind of where we're at. So a full playing group with 1 purchase, yeah. I mean, we could, if people asked us to, we can upload another version that contains more cards, but there wasn't any point in making a deck fewer than 16 cards. 16 cards is sort of like the minimum number of cards that they'll print at any one point in time. So it's honestly, you can just make your own. Honestly, you can just also literally just go. Somebody said that they just went and got some paint chips. That's a great idea. Just go do that free. Go to a hardware store, pick those up or whatever. But you can do whatever you want with them. I just think they're handy to have them, because I admit that part of my gaming experience as I grow older is to just revel a little bit in the premium. When you can afford to, it's sometimes nice to be able to play with stuff that makes it a little bit more fun, more tactile, more interesting. It's kind of the reason why we have dice, for instance. I have been using these dice for forever. These are my Exalted First Edition dice, which I adore because they're very readable and they're nice and shiny anyway. But you don't need dice. There's plenty of dice rollers that exist that you can use on a computer, a tablet, a phone, or whatever. but we tend to want to roll dice because we like the tactile experience. We like the sound as they get shaken up. We like the feel of it as they roll. We feel nicer when that happens. So premium stuff, it kind of helps. Thing is, you also sort of have to vet where you're getting things from these days. I was gifted very kindly, very generously by my players a Wormwood dice tray when I moved, and we didn't know at the time that Wormwood was kind of a sketchy sort of company, so which helps. Will I be storing the old cards as a memento and museum piece for the future? Actually, Flower of August, one day I might show you what I have plans for, but I do actually have some plans. Sharp edge dice. So I do like sharp edge dice. My preference for dice, in fact, it's strange. I have a distinct preference for dice that show a 0 instead of a 10. And I know that it shouldn't matter, but it does to me. I find the look of the zeros not as cramped, and I feel better about them. So I tend to go for dice that show zeros. And sharp dice are fun. The problem is that they also tend to be larger. And when they're larger, it's hard to roll like 20 of them all at once. I do keep Casino D6s, which are quite sharp. I do really like the feel of these for rolling. So, metal, wood, or plastic. These I believe are resin dice. It's hard to find metal D10 sets. That I've had difficulty locating, and I think that it's fun to have something that's weighted like that, but also just if you're doing that, you got to make sure that you at least have something pretty sturdy to roll them in. Again, bought this before we understood the sort of stuff from Wormwood, but if you have something that's a proper rolling surface, go for metal. But just be careful. You can actually mess up your table by dropping things. We had a Dice Maker as a sponsor at one point. So what we did, it wasn't so much so we had an FL who sent us dice. Sent us this also with a drawing of Aresta when we were doing Exalted Academy. And sent along dice with some information here. This was less of a sponsorship and more of a Nafael sent us these because she was selling them and wanted us to showcase them. So it wasn't, money did not change hands, but sent us these dice, and they were quite, and still are quite lovely. The thing about these is that they are not being made anymore, I don't think. I think she got out of the business, so, which is too bad. But we did have those, and these are sharp-edged dice, which for D10s, rare to find, but it was cool. So yeah, NFL no longer does those, I believe. I think she's out. Yeah, the thing is, dice manufacturing can be a lot of fun. It's also finicky, as I understand it. It has a lot of because you're often using things like molds and vacuum sealers in order to pull air bubbles out. You have to then create your own sort of unique, not just the bolts themselves, but also the unique sort of look to them. It's time consuming, and it costs more than people think on a small scale. So if you want to make your own set of, say, 10d10s, the cost for those dice, especially if you're selling them, the markup would have to be considerable in order to make it worth your while, and then it ends up being like pretty expensive. And I think that it's rough for people to convince people that that's a worthwhile investment. these days, despite the fact that some of these dice are really cool, really nice. Dice spinners. So, hold on. I can actually show you. Now, funnily enough, I have them here. Because there are places also where you can order custom dice. I actually have a few custom dice because one was for a product launch at a studio that I was working at. They released a D&D licensed game, and so everybody got a D20 with the company's logo as the 20 on the die, which is pretty cool. I also have some Netrunner D6s, including one that is metal, which I love, but it's with my Netrunner stuff at the moment. So it is possible, but you kind of have to order a lot of them in order to make that at all worthwhile. You can't kind of just get one set and call it that. So now, yeah, she retired and passed on to someone she had worked with. Yeah, but he's not doing the same dice. Because I'll also say this. The unfortunate reality when it comes to playing storyteller system games is that there just isn't as much of a market for the niceties, the really upscale premium stuff, because for most people, they'll go straight to D&D. D&D is just overwhelmingly more popular, and so there's more money in it in a lot of ways. So I have these. Now it's a little harder to see, of course. I'm not able to kind of walk over and zoom in because I'm alone here. But these are rings which spin, and there's a D10, a D6, and a D20. And these I picked up at Gen Con. Way too long ago at this point. At Gen Con. And these are, they have like a little notch on them so that you can tell what number you've rolled when you just sort of flick it and the outer ring spins. They have numbers on them, and it rotates. Those are fun. The thing is, if you give them a good spin, they're not really skill based. They will, I would consider these random enough. If I'm being honest with you, as long as you, just in the same way that if I drop a d6, I can influence the outcome of the roll without rolling it. As long as you're doing a proper thing, then it's not skill-based, it's luck-based. There are issues with these, though. The first is that you kind of have to keep cleaning them. They will get dirty, and they don't spin as well, so you have to dunk them in soapy water and really kind of rub the gristle out. The other thing that I find with these dice rings are that, so a D20 can be useful, right? If you're sitting down and you're playing with somebody and then you just want to kind of have that D20 on you, it's fun, but it's also hard for other players to see. Not all tables can have to have the open rolls. In fact, at my table, funnily enough, the players, when they roll, I don't see their dice. I can't. From where I'm sitting, if you look, and one day, probably for our patrons soon, we're gonna do like a current tour of what the studio looks like and what the experience is of running something, both from my perspective and the players' perspectives. But I can't see their dice. They can see each other's dice, which, like I have to assume that they're not cheating. I would really doubt they would, and I don't see why they would want to anyway. And they can't see mine. My dice are actually, so you'll see here, this is a monitor that I have. This is where I tend to keep, on this monitor, game rules. It's where Lot Casting Atemi lives right now, for when I'm running Exalted. This monitor blocks their view of my desk, and there's another monitor that you can't see. My hand is resting on it now. It's lower and it's tilted away. And this monitor is where I have stream information on it. And both those monitors block the view of my dice tray. So The players can't see it. I'm also a bit too far away from them. It would be difficult for them to see even if these monitors weren't here. So we roll closed anyway. So these dice rings wouldn't actually matter that much. But of course, when you're rolling these, you're just rolling one die. So for my 10-sided die, for instance, this doesn't really make a whole lot of difference for rolling in a storyteller system thing, because then I'd have to roll again and again and again. Now, this would be perfect. This particular D10 die would be perfect if you were playing the Mind's Eye Theater version of World of Darkness that came out like a long time ago for Requiem, Forsaken, and Awakening. They've since come out with another one. I think they went back to rock, paper, scissors, I believe. I have to check. But for a while, they were doing this system where you had a normal character sheet, and then you would add your stats to a 1d10 roll. And this would be a perfect way to generate that 1d10 in a way that you could kind of just keep it on your finger, and you were LARPing, and then you could just sort of spin it, be like, oh, okay, that's what I rolled, and then you could move on. That's kind of a handy thing. So that's what I would have recommended the D10 for. And then you have a D6. These are actually quite useful if you are playing Netrunner. If you're playing Netrunner, you often need to generate a random number between 1 and 5. Sometimes, though, that number can go higher. And so these are actually perfect for that. You generate the random number to choose which card you're going to access from the player's hand to make sure that it's random. So that's kind of a fun thing. And yeah, spinners that look like discs with a window for the number to show. So spinners, the main thing that I would say about spinners is that there is no such thing as true random in terms of dice even, but for the vast majority of us, it's fine. Like, you'll find that there are some that, do ultra calibrations to make sure that the dice roll perfectly, and they tend to be more expensive as a result. But like Chessex dice are going to generate more than random enough. The thing about spinners is that spinners are, I believe, slightly more prone to having favored numbers just based on the wear and tear. It's a bit more influenced for spinners than it is for dice. The other thing about spinners is that unless it's really well made, I want it to lock on a number. I want that number to be absolutely clear and precise. And sometimes spinners can be a little bit wishy-washy about what number it's showing. So that sort of helps. Flower of August, yeah, this would be great for playing while on a road trip, especially for games where you just have to like roll just one die, and you can kind of sit there and do it so that you don't have to worry about rolling it on your lap or whatever, for sure. And yeah, there's enough trust within us that there's no cheating going on. Now, we have, at various times, we have had people ask us about dice cam. The idea that people would want to see what rolls are, and they'd want to see it live on screen. And we don't think we're gonna do that probably anytime soon. There's a couple of reasons. First, it's a whole other camera. But it's not just one camera, it would have to be 4 cameras, because we roll our own individual places. We don't roll in one central location. The way that our table is set up, the players kind of are sitting in a line, and for them all to roll in one place would be it would be obtuse. The second is that if we're playing a storyteller system game, often the rolls are several dice, it's not just one die. And so you'd have to leave it on screen for a long time for people to be able to count how many successes that somebody would come up with. And that would just slow things down. Because then we'd have to leave it on screen for a bit in order to make sure that everybody would get a chance to see it and all of that. And then finally, there's a space question. So it's not just the number of cameras we need, it's where would we put them. We did, however, come across a document scanner at one point, which sits and it's just something that goes like this, and it would have been a great dice cam thing. So we now know that they exist, but I'm not sure that we're ever going to use one for whatever it's worth. But we've had other thoughts. I've always been kind of curious about putting a camera high up at an angle to sort of show the whole room as a table, just, and we could potentially have that as a cutaway for either the beginning of stream or end of stream. But again, a lot of these things, they're possible, but they would be pretty expensive and pretty fiddly for what I don't consider a whole lot of game. We have our 2 cameras that work right now. We're very happy with them. I am not certain how much better we can get in our current space, although I am looking to potentially reorganize the office. And if I do, we might change the setup. So it depends. But right now, I kind of like the way that it is. I kind of like the way that it works. Yeah, Flower of August, something like that. The lights go out and everybody leaves while talking. Yeah, exactly. But, you know, I don't think it's super necessary for what we're doing, especially because we have the art that we commissioned, and so now we're showing that art. So we have that. Does the player cam sit between me and them as we play? No. The player cam is actually right, if you go and look at current Datafall episodes, the player cam is sitting, it's mounted to the wall, and it is right next to Kate. For Werewolf, it was right next to Scott. That camera is pointed at me. The player cam sits to my right. It's actually up here. So you see where I am here. It's about, from where the tip of my finger is, I'd say it's about 20 centimeters, 15 centimeters that way. Because the player cam angles, it's a little high and it angles down so that we get a bit of a view of the table as well as the players. Whereas this camera is a little bit more like, it's not, I don't think it's quite as high, and it sort of shoots me direct on, so that I can look at it directly from there. But we've gone through a couple of different iterations of how we sit and why, and there's a bunch of things that we kind of take into account because we want everybody to be seen. We definitely want everybody to be heard. That's more important than being seen, is being heard properly. And we just really want to make sure that when we are playing, that things aren't in the way. Because one of the things that we realize as a group for ourselves is that we really enjoy being able to be in the same room. We get a better energy, we enjoy the game far more, and it's a lot easier to interact and bounce off each other than with the lag that's introduced through long distance gaming. Long distance gaming is great. I'm so happy that it exists. We've done it ourselves. We did it for almost 2 years while I didn't even live in Montreal. We have done it during COVID, but we much prefer to be in person. That little half second of lag that occurs causes a little bit of hitching in the game. It makes performing a little bit difficult, but also just being in the room gives us that much more energy. It's more fun. So one thing that we don't want is we don't want a lot of barriers between us, between me and the players, especially as well. We want everybody to be comfortable and to enjoy themselves and to interact. The streaming stuff that surrounds us is important, but it's not as important as our own sort of communication between them. So that's the deal with what that looks like. Now we can go on to the sort of the main event here. We've sort of vamped for longer than I expected. So we have 3 questions in here that was in the Clinic Hours channel on our Discord. So I thought I'd start with that, and let's find out what these are. A couple of people weighed in already in the channel, but I didn't because I specifically decided to do this. Is Q working today? I can activate it. Let's now exclamation mark Q should be active. There we go. So yeah, if you do an exclamation mark Q and then you type a space and then your question, it'll go into my queue, and then I'll make sure that I can get to your question later on. It's just a bit easier for me to keep track of that in case chat starts going quickly and I miss a question. So Q never worked a day in his life. Q works real hard, Zablica. Harder than any of us could even comprehend. All right, Mistrich specifically asked, John, how do you go about making NPCs, especially for a campaign like the Montreal by Moonlight, where you had to keep track of a dozen plus that were regularly active? So I have taken a couple of different tacks with this particular question. And there's a few ways that I've done it. The way that I found is most effective depends on the game. But for Montreal by Moonlight, I knew that I needed to create an existing community of Garou. So if you are not familiar with Werewolf the Apocalypse, Garou tend to operate out of packs and sets. Packs just being a general, okay, this is a group of werewolves that tends to run and fight and work together. And then you'll have sets. Sets are a larger group of Garou, often made up of several packs or just Garou who've gotten together, and they tend to stay in one location, one place, usually surrounding a cairn. I knew that I wanted 2 different cairns, and I knew that I wanted a community to exist, and I knew that I didn't want the players to sort of constantly have to be like, well, I'm new here, because their backstories had indicated that they had been in the city for at least a little while. So they didn't know everybody extremely well, but they didn't want to have to like manually meet each character. So I gave them a synopsis for each character so that they could dive in that way, so that they could have an understanding, because also this was the first time that they had played Werewolf. So I wanted to give them a little bit more insight as to what that meant. Now, I can see if I have this. I think I might have to open a different browser for this, but that's okay. Have to sync in, but let's see. If I have, because I could potentially just show you the what it looked like. That's the map. The map is not what we're looking for here. All right, so I will sign in here. We're gonna sign in here. See, I'm gonna, should have done this beforehand, but that's okay. Just have all my 2-factor authorizations. My email address is quite protected. It needs to be. Back in the day when I worked for certain companies, it was a necessary thing because I had people trying to hack my email to discover things about stuff that I was working on. And that wasn't fun. All right. So, Montreal by Moonlight, cairns and NPCs. So I presented the players with, here, I'll show you. I'll just put it right up here on the screen. So it'll be able to capture. So this is a bit of what it looks like. I wrote down kind of a synopsis for each character, and this is all I did for these NPCs. This is how I prepared, and this is how I gave them so that they could prepare. If I haven't added an iris scan, is it really safe? I mean, that's literally partially what Face ID is on Apple devices. It's a facial scan. It's a biometric scan. Touch ID, fingerprints. Android does the same thing for fingerprints, and some of them do facial scans. I don't think they quite do it the same way that Apple does, but Apple has the disadvantage that they have the notch. Anyway, so we have the various NPCs that are listed here. So I'll zoom in so that you can see a little bit better. Can I zoom? Yeah, I'll zoom in this way so that it's less. So, for instance, the cairn spirit, the name of the cairn, I showed the power of the cairn as well. And I just keep my descriptions short. There's a reason that I keep them short. This, overall, this actually has a lot of things written down on them. There's how many pages is this? 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's 4 pages, and 4 pages is a lot to give players. This was a particular campaign that I gave them a bit more to work with because, again, I wanted them to feel like they could at least get an idea of what the universe was like, but I didn't expect them to read all of it. And especially for each character, they are not going to be interested in getting like 2 pages about one character, because the fiction that you write has to be compelling enough that players will want to read it. And it's easier to keep their attention. It's easier to grab their attention and to excite them if you're giving them short bursts of information with something to latch onto and mystery to leave so that they can wonder. That's kind of the stuff that I try to put into an NPC description. Something that they can hold on to and something that they don't know yet. Just so that they have enough to be like, I wonder, I want to meet this person. I want to understand more about them. You give them too much, and then it's just like, well, then why do I want to bother meeting this person? But also, and this is something that I've learned over my time, and it is a little bit harsh for me to put them in. There's people's written prose when it comes to things like, I'm going to dash something off and then submit it, is often not as compelling as people think that it is. And this is true for professional writers as much as it's true for amateur writers. When you write something down, it is your thoughts going onto a page. When you're reading something like a screenplay or a novel, this is something that has been written and rewritten and rewritten and edited and seen by several people and workshopped and then written again and again and again and then put out. 95% of the time, that's what you see. And that's why it's something that when you sit down and you read it, you're like, oh, okay, this has been finely crafted to be interesting to read. Your initial thoughts are often not. So keep them short. A, that means that you can make them interesting right away, but B, you risk not boring your players. If you hand somebody something that is like a 20-page manifesto and say, hey, I want you to read this before the start of game, and it's already not proofread and workshopped and all of that, your players are probably going to get bored. This is also why when I ask for player histories to come to me, I want a paragraph max. I want bullet points preferably. I don't want something that's really long and elaborate and overwrought, because A, if I feel like you put too much work into it, then I can't have input. And games like this need to have that back and forth, and that includes the storyteller. I put this much work into my NPCs because I want them to develop over the course of the game by the actions and reactions of the players, instead of my just creating something that's so already created that they don't feel like they have that kind of input. But also, if you are making something like that and I don't have input to it, I can't guide it to make it so that it fits with other characters in the game itself if you've already put so much in. The other thing is, I work professionally as somebody who reads people's written work, and then I have to alter it, edit it, change it, demand that it's written again. I don't want to do that for people who are doing this for fun. So I tell people less is more in this particular case, because then we can build on it, but also you're not going to waste your time. So that helps. When I write these down, so I'm actually going to address Flowerbox's question like right off the bat here. I find it interesting that there doesn't seem to be physical descriptions on the NPC write-ups I showed. When do I tend to put those down to paper? I don't. I kind of don't. I describe them when the players meet them. Now, some of this is because, again, I don't want to work too hard at these, because if I do, and then a player chooses not to interact with them or is bored with them or whatever, I don't want to waste that kind of time. I create frameworks that are very loose, and I let players come in and then they can play with it. It's their sandbox. They can choose what they want to do with it, and therefore I can't get too attached. If I put a lot of effort into a few of these characters, that's going to be an issue. It's going to be a problem if I do too much there, because that means that I've wasted my time. So I often don't put physical descriptions until the players meet them, and I come up with those on the spot. I sometimes have an idea of what a character would look like, and generally I also try to make sure that each character has an identifying feature. In Montreal by Moonlight, Jennifer Slade was very kind of like fashion conscious, but in a severe way. I wanted that to be clear right from the bat, right? She wears a coat, has those big buttons, right? I wanted it to look like pseudo-military. I wanted her to feel like she was intimidating right from the moment that you see how she's dressed. I should also hide this because you can't see me. Well, what I can do, actually, I'll just put it down here. Slide it right down here. Yeah, and I don't want to make a Mary Sue. Archetypes are fine, but you also don't want to put so much effort into an NPC that you become attached to them and then they become more important than the rest of the game. I've seen this happen countless times. I have, a long time ago, I have myself been guilty of this. Don't make an NPC so important and so cool that then you make the story about them. That's where players start to feel like they don't matter anymore, that they're watching you put on a play instead of contributing to a story as an equal partner. So if I spend, 20 hours writing the backstory of a character and their physical description, and I feel really fucking good about this character, and then I present it, and then the players reject it, I'm gonna feel badly. But if I present it and then I kind of force it on the players, then they're not gonna feel great either. This is my style. Plenty of styles out there. I can't say that I'm correct all the time. But if I look here, Cleaves the Lie, for instance, he's the most elder. He's a strong proponent of the litany. He claims that his unrivaled ability to sense truth comes from a lifetime enforcing the rules of the former Garou Nation, but he's getting on in years and he no longer has quite the motivation to defend his beloved rules as he once did. So what I've done, I've said, here's a guy, he's the oldest Garou in the city, he has an incredible ability to sense truth, so players already know right from the start that they shouldn't try to bullshit him, or if they do, it's going to be hard, but that he's lost his motivation. I don't explain why, because it's way more fun for them to find out in character. I say that he claims that he has an unrivaled ability to sense truth, but I don't make that fact, because I want to leave a little bit of interpretation there. Is he lying about that? Is he exaggerating? Is he has he lost his touch? I don't want the players necessarily to know everything right off the bat. You can go down to Hannah York, who at the time was known as Sight of Seven. She became Sight of Eight in the course of the game. Sight of Seven keeps to herself. Others are happy to give her a wide berth. Her predictions are completely off the wall, grisly to boot. She manages to keep the peace among the spirits on the mountain, so most of her are content to have her around, just not too close. So we're already saying that like she's thorny, that she can rub people the wrong way. Then at the bottom of my right, for some reason, Goose, the spirit of that cairn, steers well clear of Hannah. So I establish some facts, I establish a mystery, and I leave it. Let the players discover it if they want, if they really care about it. Sorry, I just have to catch up here. The wrong email account on Chrome. What? Who? This isn't Chrome, by the way. This is a what you're looking at is actually Edge. And I mean, if you want to email me, just email me. Yeah, it's very common for that. Yeah, if you're gonna do that, make them the damsel in distress for the PCs to save like Zister. So, hi KAFM. I don't recognize this handle, and I'm gonna be embarrassed. Who are you? Because you clearly watch Changeling the streaming, so I'm kind of curious about that. Oh, that's you. Ah ha ha ha. Okay, Mr. Rich, now I understand. Sorry. That makes sense. Anyway, so yeah, damsels in distress are interesting characters to have for that. But again, I don't put too much into it because what if the players decide not to save them? Sky One Last Dash only went through her first change 3 years ago. She's appointed herself the Cairn of the Weathered Storm's Welcome Committee, acutely aware of the mental and social pain each Garou feels, and is known to be completely committed to keeping secrets. This is more of a minor mystery. I leave that in there because I want players to think, oh, she's really good at keeping secrets. What secrets does she know? Why is she committed to keeping secrets? Who could possibly have such important secrets that she has to do this? And why is it known that she's committed to keeping secrets? Just little things. Little things. A fact, a mystery. That's all you need. And then this is how I tend to create characters. Now, there are other things that I've done. Let me make sure that I'm not revealing too much information here. So we also have the reference, default character references. So I'll show you this. This might end up being a patron post at one point to see the whole thing, but this is an example of what we've done when we commissioned our art piece. When we commissioned our art pieces, there I do need to provide a physical description. Sometimes it's as simple as when you're asking for art, you say, I want 20 instances of a villager, and you explain about what the village looks like, what kind of time period it is, what sort of clothing, levels of technology, and say, give me 20, go. And that's it. That's all you need to do. But that's for something if I was asking for that for, like, say, a video game. Now, in this particular case, I want commissioned art of a very specific character, and so you have to strike a balance. We're spending a certain amount of money on these commissions. Commissioned artists will sometimes ask for a lot of detail, sometimes they will ask for very little, and it often depends on how much you're paying them. If you drop 1,000 words on a $30 commission, then you're already asking the artist to read 1,000 words before they've even started, and then they have to assimilate all of this detail in a sketch that they might only be spending an hour on, right? Depending on the cost per hour of that artist. So instead, what I have here is I have the template that I made that I passed on to the other the other players. Remember, this is part of my job that I would talk to people and say, this is what I'm interested in. Here are the details that are important. So you start with a name. Oftentimes the name can be evocative, doesn't have to be, but you generally want to give a name because sometimes artists like to read into the names, and plus it'll make things a bit easier later on. Here we also mention the exalted type, chosen, so a sidereal, chosen of, and here it's would be chosen one of the 5 maidens. We go to visuals, apparent age and race. This is not the place where it's where you want to be too careful. It is fine, for instance, to say we want somebody who looks, and then you describe them as you would somebody in today's world. And artists usually appreciate that. It's not because you are being racist, quote unquote, if you say that this person looks like they have very dark skin, somebody who would have been born and raised in the Congo, say. You could say that. That's fine, because that gives the artist something to go for. There's a few things that I wouldn't do. Don't use food as a description of somebody's skin color. Do not describe somebody's skin as chocolate or mocha or light coffee, milk coffee, latte I've seen. Don't do that. That's kind of diminutive, and you often don't see people refer to white people like that. So you say age, you say race, there we go. It's Aragorn. Hello, Aragorn. In terms of skin, mentioning skin color, scars, freckles, conditions. Remember that skin takes up a lot of a character. Eyes, the color and the shape. If you don't mention these things, then expect to get generics, right? Artists will have defaults that they'll fall back on. So saying that a shape is a certain way or color, no problem. Hair, color, style, decorations in the hair, additional details like prosthetics, tattoos, piercings, height, build. All of these things you only need 1 or 2 words potentially to describe any of these things. Clothing, brief description of clothing colors and patterns. You can get really detailed if your artist wants to, but you can also say something that's relatively smooth. Items, weaponry, jewelry, bags, accessories. Be careful when you're commissioning art. Some of them will charge more for signature items, right? If you're asking for the coolest fucking sword ever that has runes inscribed along the blade and it glows in a certain way, and it has very delicate filigree around the basket that encases the hand, some artists will charge more, and they should if you're asking for that level of detail. Personality. Yeah, this is important for artists. Mentioning briefly what's their vibe. Are they suspicious? Are they happy-go-lucky? Their preference on poses or expressions. Do you want the character to be, or do you want the character to look contemplative and all of that? And then reference images. Reference images end up being quite important too. You're not asking the artist to copy, but you're giving them an idea visually of what you want so that they don't have to guess. I have seen artists who take commissions who will charge more if you don't give them enough detail or if you don't give them reference images, because that means that they have to make it up. And that's more work for them. So I'll show you briefly. Again, we might end up making this as a longer, sort of a more descriptive process for a patron post. But when we used, when I wrote up Distant Smoke, gave him as apparent age 30 years old, Indian, light brown skin, a thin scar extending from left eye to left ear, eyes, hair, additional details, and the clothing. And then I added some reference images of what I wanted. So I had a standard face, I had the damaged eye that he has, an idea of the outfit that he wears, and an idea of a futuristic looking cutlass. And that's it. That's what I added there. I mentioned exile type. Is that because I knew that this person was familiar? I actually had no reason to believe that this person was familiar, but I included it for two reasons. One, because I knew that the artist wasn't the only person who would look at this. I sent the players had access to these. They saw them because A, I wanted to give them an example for them to pattern themselves on, but B, because this would give them a little bit of an idea. Sometimes they are desperate for physical descriptions and they know that I tend to make them up on the fly, but they like to have them, so I gave it to them here. But the second is the artist can, if they're curious, go and look it up. If you look up Sidereal's Chosen of Serenity, it'll take you to a wiki page. It'll tell you about that if they're curious, if that's something that they want to dive into. But also, you don't have to explain everything. It's enough to sort of make them know, oh, okay, there's some thought put behind the character. That can be enough to give them ideas that they might choose to evoke and all of that. Over-explaining things sometimes is stifling creativity. Artists can make mistakes based on assumptions that they made from reading this, and sometimes those mistakes are perfect and you want to keep them. You want to see those mistakes, realize that's not something that I considered, but it's amazing, and then you keep that. This happened over the course of this. So for our patrons, we might get into that, but this is what we ended up submitting. When it came to this, part of the reason why we'd never commissioned art in this specific way before, and we've received fan art in the past. We would love to receive more fan art, by the way, like please, that's something, and we'll throw it up on screen. Like we now have the technology that we're showing the commissioned art on screen in our info boxes, which is something that we didn't have before. Now we have that capability. We show them in the slideshows at the beginning and the end, and if you have fan art, we would love it. We got lots of great fan art for some of our campaigns. But I hesitated to give any NPCs because I still have this sort of feeling in my mind that's like, what if the players reject this NPC? What if they don't care about them? What if the NPC dies after one session because the players choose to kill them? Haven't I wasted a lot of money creating art? And then I thought, no. First, I'm not wasting money because it's your support, and you, the patrons, actually asked for this. They asked for commissioned art, and so we thought, great, no problem, let's do that. That sounds fantastic. And then secondly, we also had secondly, it helps create the universe for the players anyway. So even if it goes away, it's fine. Now, I'm not going to commission art for every NPC. That's just not feasible. But, we have that. In terms of the question that Mistrich asked, we also have, just for this, is that how do I go about making them and then keep track of a dozen? Well, that comes with experience, but because I already had the list of these NPCs that I had here, because I already had this, that ended up making it easy for me, because just these brief descriptions means that I can build upon that archetype in my head. Knowing one or two concrete details means that then I can build on that character, and then that character becomes real. That's part of an actor's training as well. Understanding a character, building that character around, that's something that I learned how to do. But it's much, much easier if I think, Hannah, she's a jerk to people. People tend to steer clear of her because she's just unpleasant in a lot of ways. And she doesn't get along well with the Cairn spirit. And then I can add on details to that. What kind of a voice do I want to give? So voices for these characters are often a descriptor and a modifier. So for Hannah, I could have said that she is a sarcastic, grizzled grandmother. And then I I need the voice to sound a bit old, even though she's not old, but I'm going to make her sound old. And then I'm going to give her that little bit of a sneer of like, I am sarcastic all the time. And then that voice is something that I can pattern not only her personality around, but then I attach the memory, the sound of that voice to the character that I've built in my mind and the plot devices that I have surrounding her. And that helps. So, that's how I keep track of these characters. I create just enough, and then I build on them, and then it becomes easier. I spent years with these characters, so it became easier and easier. Now, Aragorn has shown me something that I think is pretty cool, so I'm going to show you as well. Aragorn has a template for commissioned art as well. So we have redacted information here, which I think is very important. So there's a commission type here. So this is character exploration. So that's a great way of putting that. Sometimes you want concept art because you're trying to discover the character and you don't even know yourself. This is often common in my line of work, that I'll say, okay, let's see how this character can change and transform. I want a couple of different options. And we'll go over some options and the artist will come up and they contribute their stuff. So character exploration, great. High level description here, demon infested, resurrected half-elf ranger / secret barbarian. Very cool, but that's a high level description, one sentence. That's all you need to give somebody, okay, now I kind of understand the core. Concept and history, personality, appearance. So there's more detail here than I have put, and that's fine, right? It depends on the artist. Some artists want all this information. I didn't for mine, but there's more information here. But you see how nicely it's laid out? There's headings. It's set in a table. This makes it easier for somebody to read, and the easier you make something readable, the more likely they are actually going to read it. Then I put the concept, history, and personality first because while I have some appearance notes, it's really more important to me that you think you'd have fun with the idea and it would be enjoyable to play with. So this is put in red because it's a direct message from Aragorn to the artist. Appearance and armor items, great. And then reference. So a Pinterest board is included. A great thing to look at, Pinterest boards. If that's the thing that you work with well, go for it. Roll20 I played around with, that gives a good idea because Roll20 has character builders. I couldn't get the eyes the way that I wanted them. Another great thing to point out is this character exists, but I couldn't get it the way I want. That's why we're commissioning artists, because they can actually get things the way we want them to look. So it helps. And so I really like the way that this is drafted out. I don't operate with as much verbosity here as my default, but again, I have a different use case and I have a different experience with working with artists. This is the first time I've worked with a commission artist. Normally I work with artists who are on my team, so there's a bit of a difference there. But I think that's just super cool. Hero Forge. Okay. Yeah. I thought it would look Hero Forge. Because I don't have a lot of experience with Roll20 recently. I didn't know if there was like some kind of new thing or if they'd partnered or whatever. But Requiem also mentions no shame in including only as many regular NPCs as you can handle. So here's the thing. For this game, I deliberately didn't include 20 NPCs. I gave them 3 or 4. Enough that and some of them are, I gave the information only to one player because it relates to their backstory and not to the others. So that means that everybody gets a chance to sort of get introduced. Because this is a traveling game. This is a game where they're going to be moving from place to place to place, and they're going to be collecting NPCs. And I don't want to enforce which NPCs they have to collect. I've done that for one. And that's a plot reason. But the reality is that Neon Wisdom was somebody that they all said, every player said, I want a hot doctor. And so I made a hot doctor for them to have for the ship. So they already kind of gave me an idea of what they wanted, but I don't want to influence them over much on who they invite on board, who they insist is on board. So that helps. Talking a lot. We need the water. So this particular artist's whole thing is basically concept art. Very cool. And yeah, if you post that result, I would love to see it as well. That's fantastic, everyone. But artists, generally, if you don't know, ask. What kind of thing are you looking for? I was in constant communication with the artist. Thankfully, this artist that we worked with, Zizaz, was not only extremely professional, but also very, very good. And don't be afraid. In the sketch phase, there were things that we mentioned like, this needs to be changed, or we would prefer it if this happened. We made a detail about the clothes that is perhaps more important than you thought it was. And for each of the sketches that we got, we did alter things. That's part of what you're paying for. If you're paying a commissioned artist who gives you those sorts of options, sometimes they'll say, look, you give me $10 and you get exactly what I give you and that's it. And I'm not like, we're not going over it. Know that that's what the deal is. You don't get a say. But for this, don't be worried to speak up. And then when we got colors, we mentioned, okay, well, there's some color things that we want to have changed. As an example, Neon Wisdom's original art had her smiling. And I said that I didn't want her to smile. I wanted her to look more serious in her art, and no problem. Changed. Absolutely great interactions. The platform that we used, what made it very easy to communicate with the artist to approve work in progresses or whips, as long as we call them in where I work, worked. And so we are thrilled with the results that we got. But I know that isn't exactly what Mr. Ch asked, but I felt like it sort of dovetailed into it. Mr. Ch had another question. Where do you start with a plot? I know you've brought up that a lot is improv, but I feel like there are often seeds of a bigger plot from early on. Made an example for Datafall. This was the most recent episode. I'm going to mention it because it doesn't mean anything to you if you haven't seen it, and it won't give you any kind of hint or clue, so it's not really that much of a spoiler. But Amalgam was mentioned in the previous episode. In fact, that's the episode's title. But for other campaigns, it's certainly been true too. To use earlier result as an example, how early did Orange Jade come in as a concept? I should have thought about mentioning that before I said it out loud, considering who's in chat. Okay. Where do I start with a plot? Like I said before, I like it when my players decide where to go, what to do. I build plots around them. And oftentimes when they are coming in and they have their ideas of what they want to do and they're excited, I will guide things in that direction, but I can't be so completely freeform. If I'm just freeform, then it means that there's no initiative, and then if the players don't have a great idea of what they want to do, everything kind of falls apart. And it's up to me, the storyteller, to make sure that there's always something to do. So I have ideas for plots. And what I do is I come up with what I call frameworks, but I think I need a better word for those because they're not really frameworks. Frameworks implies this is the frame in which everything must fit. For me, they're more like bubbles. They're ideas that have popped up, and I think a lot about them, and I think of ways that people might interact with them one way or the other. And I don't get too attached to these ideas, but I think of a bunch. In terms of the start of a game, though, you tend to need to have inciting action. And so what I did is, for this game, you can actually see it in the campaign frame it's posted. I said it's going to start. I first of all, they approved of the campaign frame, so that helped. But I also said your first mission is going to be this. This is what's going to happen, and we're actually only going to start kind of like once that mission is underway. And that's what we did there. I had an idea of, okay, what does this mean for why does this mission exist? What could it possibly mean? And why is it important? The thing that are not important to me at all is what happens. Because that I want to discover in game. That's what I want to discover with the players. That's why we have math rocks, is because I want the outcome to not be known by me. And I don't force the outcome one way or the other. What I am curious about is something that I learned from a history teacher when I was in grade 8. My history teacher was very fond of saying that understanding what happened doesn't matter. What's important is understanding why things happened and what the connections are. He was so fond of saying this. He was this wonderful Italian guy, and he kept kind of going, "What's the connection?" And it was just like fantastic. His whole thing was, okay, so this country declared war on this country. That is true. And sure, you can know the date, but is the date important, or is when it happened in relation to other things important, right? Saying World War II started in 1938 is one thing, but knowing that World War II started after the Great Depression is important, and arguably more important, because that was part of the reason why, like, Germany had gone through a massive inflation, and they had to build their way out of it. Like, their currency was so worthless that they were burning it for fuel at one point. And so that's part of the reason why it got attached to it. And you can build on all of these things. So when it comes to plots, I don't care about whether the thing is going to succeed or not. I care about why is it happening, because that's what's important for the players to understand, or for them to guess, or for them to learn. So yes, there was a mission. We have to deliver these scrolls to this place, but one of them must be destroyed. Why is that important? Well, I know the contents of the 6th scroll. What I don't know is what they're going to do with the information. What I don't know is whether they're going to support destroying it or not. What I don't know is whether they're going to actually follow the mission. But I do know why the mission was done. It's important to understand why characters do what they do. A villain killing somebody is not important as why a villain chooses to kill somebody. That's the part that I think is the thing to isolate. So when I come up with the ideas, a lot of it is improv, but I have some answers in my head as well. The other thing is that I am flexible. I understand that it might be better for me to ensure that we are flexible in the ways of making sure that players are having a good time. Now, that means changing something that I had in my head. I will, just as long as I'm not changing things willy-nilly, and as long as I'm not changing things in order to deliberately mislead. This is something that has happened. It happened with Westworld famously. It happened with a couple of other television shows, that somebody guesses the answer and they're like, well, shit, if they've guessed it, we have to come up with a new answer, because if they've guessed it, then they know. And then they make changes, and those changes ended up worse, and that meant that the whole thing fell apart. Is it really so bad if players guess things early on? Is it really so bad if you have a villain that you're planning on and the players suss them out right away and kill them? Yeah, it's a bit annoying and it's frustrating perhaps, but like don't take that away from the players and then be like, it turns out that he was a good guy all along. You just didn't see. But if you hadn't thought of it beforehand, it might not be supported. And if it's not supported, then it feels like the foundation of your game is set on sand. If the foundation doesn't feel solid, then the players start feeling like nothing they do matters, because the world will just change around them all the time in order to render what they do less important or inconsequential. If you're constantly trying to gotcha them. So things that you have supported, that you can leave in, especially if players get it wrong. Montreal by Moonlight, we had a character who ended up being a plant, a betrayer. And even though there weren't obvious signs from the beginning, I knew. And if I knew from the beginning that this character had a thing, it meant that I was playing this character with that in mind, making sure that I wasn't making mistakes, where somebody could kind of point back and be like, but didn't this character do that? That doesn't make any sense. And then I would have no answer. So even if it's not obvious, knowing the answers in a head, knowing the whys, knowing the reasons, knowing the motives, those are the things that make a plot interesting, because you can build on those. That you can improvise around, and you can change them if you have to. I don't know Alexandrian's node-based design, Flower of August, I'm afraid. I'm afraid I'm not familiar. Raccoon says, I get the idea that for more major plot points, you have a starting state in mind and a few ideas at the end state with a mix of things to help it along with a ton of room for change. So I have ideas, but I don't have ideas of like, well, it's going to end this way or this way. Or I don't have the thing where I Doctor Strange it and I think of a million different ways and I know that one of them is going to end up being the right answer. But if I think about like, oh, okay, this is a possible answer, that's a possible answer, that's a possible answer, it helps me prepare so that even if the answer falls in between one of those things, because I've already thought about it, my mind is malleable. I have developed the elasticity in my head to think about things in a bunch of different ways, and therefore I am easier to go with the flow along those lines. And yeah, if somebody comes up with an awesome theory, and I think that's cool, I will start making that a reality. If I think it's cool, if I think that it's not just like shit posting, then I think that that's great. It's a lot of fun, but the way to get better at that is to just be malleable and to think of different ways to do it and to not be set. This is why I do not have a binder full of information of the villages and the storylines and here's each. I remain flexible because that's kind of what's important. For instance, even though I knew one character who was a betrayer, I didn't know about another one, Any Percent. I did not realize that Any Percent was going to get suckered until a little bit into the campaign. And I thought that was an interesting story, and it was kind of based on the actions that the players were taking and the way that the NPCs were developing. I remained flexible and open about it. I did not try to make it too... I did not decide that right off the bat, but I also didn't choose a character that it wouldn't have made sense for. The GM from LARPs is absolutely not a self-insert. I do not like the way that Evan runs games. I wrote the damn thing, so I created that character. And there are some things that he says that match me. For instance, I play to know where the story goes, yes, but Evan does way too much preparing. He is not, he is, like, part of the thing is that LARPs needed to be, you know, it needed to have conflict, which means that everybody kind of has issues, and I needed Evan to also have issues. He does not communicate with his players. He separates himself from them. He holds himself apart from them. I don't think that Evan thinks that he is better than them, but I definitely think that he feels like he can't interact with them, which is stupid. That he is somehow different, that he has to remain on like a mountaintop. Absolutely not. He is not as receptive to his players' needs. He, instead of talking with players he has problems with, he just finds ways in-game to deal with it, and I don't think that that's the correct way of doing things. I am not Team Evan. I have people tell me that they are Team Evan, and I do not agree with them. Flower of August says, one important thing to keep in mind is that the storyteller isn't a module or game story writer. They can adapt the story on the fly if they have to. They don't have to write contingencies for everything. Writing contingencies for everything is the way that you guarantee that you're going to fall apart, in my opinion. If you try to put too many things down on paper, first, you have made yourself inflexible, potentially. And second, it means that if something doesn't fit something that you've got written down, the panic sets in. All of your preparation is for nothing, and that's not what I want people to think about. I want people to go with that. Now, this is my style. It is not necessarily your style. And while I advocate for a style that includes the players more, and that it's less about the song and dance of the GM, and the players just happen to be there for the ride, there is nothing wrong with doing something like running a pre-published adventure with a definitive beginning and end. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. And if your group enjoys that, fucking go for it. That's what I would want people to do. But I am going to say something in that recently I have an idea for a shirt that I want to make. I want to make a shirt that just reads "Normalize Retcons." And I just want to wear that because I think that's important. More and more these days, I am convinced that retconning is the kind of thing that we should be doing far more of, as opposed to avoiding it or doing it as a last resort. Because when my players ask for a retcon, it's because they say, I will have more fun if this happens. And because the retcons they ask for do not materially worsen anyone else's fun, they should absolutely do it. Normalize retcons. For what it's worth. Now, obviously, if you have a player who wants things retconned just because they think that role-playing is something that they should be winning at, that's something different. But, for instance, last session, Kate asked, hey, I know that I said that I was going here, but can I say that I was going here instead? It just seems like it would be more appropriate for a Chosen of Journeys to have a better location in mind of where to go. It didn't change a fucking thing for the game, but it made her feel better about her character, and it meant that we got to get to the action faster. Okay, great, so we'll change things. Being bound and wrapped in the context of, but you said this and so therefore it must be true. That, no. So Kung Fu Fenders, what were you, when you said goddammit earlier, what were you saying before? Because I do want to know, right? Like if now you're saying it makes a lot more sense. So I'm curious what you were reacting to, what you thought I was mentioning before. But that's what I mean when I say like normalize retcons. If somebody says, oh man, I don't think I would have said that now that I understand what the situation is it really going to hurt the game if you say, no, you can't take it back? Because if it was literally I, the player, did not understand this nuance of the world, and my character should have, at the very least, you can say, like, let's roll your etiquette to see if you understand. Etiquette not being a exalted thing, but it is in werewolf or vampire. That's important. It's okay to make changes if it means that everybody gets to be happier. It's not okay to enforce rigid, strict, this is what is going to happen no matter what, even though everybody is miserable about it. Don't do that. But of course, if you're going to retcon something, just be aware that it's no good to steal from one player in order to make another player happy. Saying, okay, well, it turns out that this character didn't go here, so therefore the other character didn't save the day. That can be a little rough on the character who might be like, but I wanted to save the day. So just communicate, use your fucking word hole. But yeah, normalize retcons. That's what I would say here. And then, sorry, to finish Mr. Rich's question here, the other thing that I'll have done is I will say, I think of some things that I'm like, that would be cool. I think this would be a neat thing, and I keep it in reserve. So it might be as simple as, I think that it would be real cool if one day the group encounters a Death Knight a Death Knight, and let's say that I want that to occur at a time where the players need an unlikely ally. Okay, I have that in my head. I don't have to pull that trigger. I don't have to pull that trigger for the entire game if I don't want to. But if I'm like, I think this would be cool, and I have an idea for a Death Knight that I think would be fun to play, great. So I keep it in reserve. And then if it becomes important, either because players sort of hit the triggers of when I think that would be a good time to bring it in, like they need an unlikely ally, or the players are in a position where I need something to shake the game up. Either they're spinning their wheels, they're in a rut, or the game needs a twist. It needs something to get them to sit up and be excited. I have something in mind. And I tend to have a bunch of these things. They're in my head, they're ideas, they're bubbles. They're not real. They're only real once I actually bring them out. So I'm not beholden to them. Being beholden to things is the thing that makes it difficult. This guy's 2 feet taller than you and all muscle. Are you sure you want to taunt him? Oh, you thought the gas station attendant was a dweeb. Yeah, that makes sense. So like oftentimes players will ask for retcons because you fucked up as the storyteller. I do this all the time. I have a picture in my mind. I'll say this and they'll be like, oh yeah, well, we assume that this person was like this because I never actually bothered to describe them. And so sometimes that's important to keep that in mind. So we hold on to that. I'm gonna take a look at the queue here just because I haven't done that, and then I'm gonna go on to Arametheus's question that they posted. Given Exalted is the current game, given all additions into account, what are your favorite Exalts in terms of lore and theme, and what is your favorite in terms of mechanics? It can be the same Exalt. So right now, Requiem, right now I really like Sidereals just because fucking that book is great. Their charms are great. From a mechanics point of view, Sidereals are super cool, and I really like them, and I'm looking forward to exploring them more. I confess that in terms of lore, I confess that I like to root for underdogs. I kind of like the Solars, and I think that there's a reason why they are sort of the default in the setting. I think that it's cool to be like, yep, I am super powerful, but the entire world is against me. And what can I do about these? How do I avoid becoming what my predecessors were? I like that quite a bit. But Sidereals are super cool. I love the flavor of them, and I'm really looking forward to some cool role-playing experiences with them. So that's kind of like why we chose Sidereals. Partially because we think they're cool and awesome, and partially because the book ended up being really great for that. If we had gone Essence, I'm not sure what the players would have picked, whether they would have picked Sidereals or other splats. But I would have just gone with whatever they wanted. Thargavas writes, we already covered the physical descriptions. And then Arametheus asks, does your approach to NPC creation means that you won't use canon NPCs in any fashion? No, in fact, that's not what it means. I will use canon NPCs at times, but I make a couple of reservations. So canon NPCs are NPCs that are written into the source material, and they often help give players an idea of what this world looks like. So are you playing werewolf? Do you have King Albrecht? Do you have Zizek? Do you have, if you're playing vampires, Theo Bell, Camarilla Superstar, all up in your grill? Are you playing Exalted? Scarlet Empress, Egypt, the Black Rose, all of that stuff. Like all of these things are great for building out the world, and I will use them. The difference is that I don't feel like I have to do everything that the book says. I don't research these characters and know every single little thing about them. But it's important for me that if I do deviate from them, I do tell the players that I'm going to. Or I sort of make it clear that I'm like, this is my version of this character. And often because my players are not that interested in obsessively reading about lore, they don't care. The audience might care. And so I think about them when I do this sort of thing. But generally, no, I don't feel like that's a problem for me. And several canon NPCs have appeared in these games. High King David, Queen Laurel, all four of the heir apparents, all of those appeared in Changeling the Streaming, for instance. So yeah, Theo Bell left the Camarilla in V5, I know. He's always the Camarilla Superstar to me, because you broke the Masquerade, so he'll throw a fucking bus at you. Once upon a time, I had a Theo Bell action figure that somebody gave me as a joke. It came with a stop sign and a shotgun. It was great. It was great. Sheshop, stick around. There are only 100 Sidereals, so, you know, by elimination at some point, I'm probably going to have to play them. If they ever have to talk to Grandpapa, they just might. We'll find out about that. So, Arametheus also asked a question in the Discord. One of the questions that's come to mind, I have had in no small part thanks to RPG Clinic, thank like you, a growing desire to run Exalted 3rd Edition again. Great. However, the group of this is most likely to happen as a player who does not deal well with system complexity and cannot really engage with written material. Although he really liked Exalted when running with pre-made characters for a one-shot, particularly stunting, he barely engaged with charms, essentially needing reminding that they were there and repeated explanations of what they did. As an example from another system, I've had times when spending 15 XP in a Dark Ages Vampire Chronicle had been a 20-minute video call. Any tips or tools to help players who struggle with complicated systems? Or is running Exalted with this player as part of the group a terrible, bad, wrong idea, and we should stick to simpler systems? So, I only need 100 art commissions and I have 5 down. Erwin? Yep. Hey, look, if patrons continue supporting the channel and the Chronicle goes long enough, maybe we'll get the canon 100 sidereals all out. Maybe. We're already overjoyed by the patrons and their support. We are, I believe that it isn't remiss for me to say, we are officially charging less and making more based on this. We have in terms of our subscribers, and that's just to support the channel. Like we don't draw salaries from this or anything like that, but things like the art that we commissioned, things like our technology, the ability for Kate to wrangle the beautiful overlays that we got from Aragorn and to create new technology and that stuff. You know, we need equipment to make that run, like Stream Decks and all that. So that's thanks to you. We really do appreciate it. Sorry, Aramithius, we're just about to answer your question and now you gotta go. I'm sorry. I should have probably prioritized you. But you can come back and you can listen to it later. So, here's the thing. Exalted is a huge game. It's massive. I've shown it plenty of times. It's within hand's reach, but this is dice boxes on top of it. I don't like touching the player's stuff if they don't give me consent. It's a huge book. It's got hundreds and hundreds of pages in it, and it's very intimidating for anybody who looks at it. But even a smaller book is intimidating. I mean, if I pull Blades in the Dark. So this book, it's a great little book, by the way. I love books that are small like this so that you can kind of just quickly check things and all that. Like, this is a book that also has a great layout in it. Very interesting in the way that it's presented some things, very clear. And people often suggest this as like, oh, this is more Rules Light. This isn't Rules Light. This is 300 plus pages of setting and systems and characters and rules. This is a lot to throw at anybody. I see people whose eyes glaze over if there's more than one page of rules in a board game. And you're asking them to take a look at this? Some people love reading rule books. Some don't. And there was a time in my life where I used to read them obsessively. I would memorize books. I had the Changeling 2nd edition book memorized backwards and forwards at one point. Like, I read it every night because I loved the game and I just wanted to absorb as much as I could. But not everybody is like that. And that is fair. That is completely fair. Yeah, no, this is not a rules-like game, by the way. It is a little less crunch intensive than some games, but it is not rules light. This is a big ass book. But there's a few things that I will point out for people. For one thing, is that you definitely do not need to read the whole thing. In fact, if you're a storyteller who's interested in running a game that is more mechanically or system or setting complex, then you can kind of help boil it down for players. And this is something that I've done for players. I'll say, hey, I think it's really important that you read this, and that you read this, and that you read this, and that's it. You do not need to read anything else. And part of that is charms for Exalted. I don't want players to read the charms descriptions if it's their first time. There's way too many of them. There's tons. And even if you're like, hey, that's rough. So here's how I get players interested in games that are more complex than it would first appear, or that the players first feel comfortable with. First things first, I never force somebody to play a game they don't want to. I will suggest give it a try. I will pitch them the game, and I will even say that I will help them, but I don't force them. So that's one. The second is that I don't make promises. If I make promises and I don't want to keep them later on, then I'm either doing them or myself a disservice. So if I say, I'll help you, like I'll help you pick your charms, I'll go over the character creation with you, we'll figure something out, and then I'll be patient with you throughout. And then, the game starts and I'm like, fuck, I'm spending like 90% of my mental energy basically playing for somebody else because they just don't want to learn. That's no good. So I make sure that I set my expectations for what I want the player to know and what I'm willing to do. So for Exalted, for instance, I might say, look, let's give this a try. First, I'm going to pitch you the game. I'm going to give you an idea of what the game is about, and I'm going to try to get you excited. So I might talk about how Exalted is like the combination of different mythologies from around the world, but with like high-flying wuxia action. It's anime without being anime. It is you get to be a straight-up demigod right from the start, and you only get more powerful from there. You get people hype about like, this is what the game is. You give them that pitch. You make it important for them. That's cool. Right off the bat. That's fun. But then what you'll do is you say, okay, here is what level of preparation I'm going to ask from you. And here's the level of effort that I am going to put in for you. So, for instance, I might say, this is the stuff that I need you to read so that you have a basic understanding of it. Here's the thing that I'm going to teach you, either one-on-one or as a group, as part of like a session -1. And here's the things that I'm going to outright do for you right from the start. So I do this in a way to give people the impression of, okay, this is what you can do in order to make sure that you fit in with the rest of the group. But I do also set expectations in terms of, look, for the first few sessions, if it takes you like 30 minutes to run through a round of combat, that's okay. That's fine. We'll get through it. Like, everyone's got to learn. But I do set expectations where I'm like, are you going to make the effort to learn? Because by session 10, I don't want to have to hold your hand as much anymore. There will always be some hand holding. Always. That's just going to be how it is, right? Like, there's going to be times where you'll remember a rule and someone else won't. This happens to me all the time, where they remember rules that I don't, or you in the audience remembers a rule that I don't. So that's inevitable. Or if I say I'm going to override the rules, then that's when I am directly reaching out and holding their hand. But I do insist that they kind of have to be like, okay, yeah, this is the die that you roll. This is the important one, right? For a D20 system, it gets really frustrating when a player asks every time that you ask them to make a roll, which die do I have to roll here? Well, if it's D20, 99% of the time you're rolling the 20-sided die. And if they just never catch on to like the basics of, you're going to roll this die, you're going to see if this number is higher than that number. If it is, you make it. If you don't, you fail. If they can't grasp that, then either it means that they don't care or they're not trying. Or what they're doing is that they're just content to let other people do it. And if you're comfortable with other people doing it for them, great. Everybody's having fun, no problem. But I'm not. I don't want to play with somebody who is not engaged with the system in that way. Because the system is part of what makes the game fun for me, and I don't like it when other players play for somebody else. So I set the expectations. In like 5 sessions, you're going to have this and you're going to know the rules that you're going to need to know. No problem. And if by the 5th session they don't, I'm going to tell them, I'm going to say like, look, we can sit down, I can go over this with you, but like, we've been playing for a little bit. I kind of need you to at least have read these rules. So that's sort of the situation that I'm in, that right at the start is I tell that. Like Requiem says, if it's brand new players, maybe you run a game where you are brand new Exalted and you have like 5 charms. You have like 1 charm. one charm that they just have right off the bat. You give them a chance to use it to see how powerful a charm is, and then you encourage them from there. But okay, how much backseat do I do in these hand-holding situations? Do I say, no, that's a terrible build decision, you should take this instead, or I let them experiment? So watch the character generation videos for Datafall as a most recent example of that. The players had built their characters beforehand with some guidance from me, and they had some things that they hadn't fully done that they were going to flesh out on stream. But then I also challenged them in the middle of streams because there were things that I noticed, like, you're not optimized the way that the game is hoping that you'll optimize. And then I let them do it. If a player says, no, I think this is what I want to do, I back off. I am not going to change somebody's character sheet for that reason. There's just no point. Unless I know for a fact that something is never going to come into play. Like if somebody starts spending half of their charm slots on charms that prevent wild corruption, and I'm like, you're never going to go into the wild. I don't want to run the wild, so we're not going to touch it. That would be a mean thing for me to not warn a player about, or to say you should probably change these charms because they will never, ever, ever be applicable. But I don't backseat that way. I will tell them that. I will say, hey, you've made this choice. You might want to consider this. Or based on what you've told me, this doesn't make sense. I will mention that too, right? If somebody comes to me and says, I want to be somebody who is a politician, who is an excellent swordsman. Okay, no problem. But I notice that you have no charisma or manipulation. So are you a bad politician? Now, the reason why I would ask that is because there's plenty of reasons why somebody could be a politician and have shitty social scores. Maybe you're like a Nepo baby, you know, like you are a politician because your mom was a fantastic politician and you're riding her coattails and you actually suck as a politician, but that's how you identify. That's completely okay. Maybe it's, no, you're a good politician because you happen to have a lot of dots in socialize and stuff like that, but your core charisma and manipulation are just straight up bad. That's an option. But I'll run into these sorts of things where someone will say, like, I want to be a soldier who's gone through basic training. And I'll say, if you've gone through basic training, you wouldn't have firearms 5, but you also definitely wouldn't have etiquette 0. If you've gone through basic training, they will have drilled some etiquette in your ass. Otherwise, you would have been a terrible recruit. So these are things that I will point out. If I think that you've optimized really poorly, I'll mention it, because I also don't want one player to optimize well and the other players not to. And optimization is a tricky thing. I don't mean min-maxing, I mean optimization. If somebody is like, I want to, I don't want to take any 5s, I might mention, this shuts out a lot of the charms that you're going to want. You will eventually need a 5 in, say, integrity. You'll need that 5. I know you want this charm, but you only have integrity 3, which means that you're going to have to spend a lot of experience to get up to 5. Why are you choosing to start in integrity 3? Then they can make the choice. But I'll tell them, you've optimized poorly because you should be pumping your integrity to 5 right off the bat, and maybe buy up some other things that you don't need as much later on to fill the hole, instead of wasting a lot of experience putting those last few dots in, dots that you know you want right away. So that helps. But the kind of key is, I'll mention that, but I'll also mention if their sheet does not reflect the character they express interest in playing. You express interest in playing somebody who is well known at being a terrifying combat machine, and I point out you have 1 dot in brawl and 1 dot in melee and 1 dot in archery and 1 dot in thrown, and 1 dot in martial arts. Okay, so you're okay at a lot of things, but nobody is going to be like, this is the greatest warrior that's ever lived. They're going to say like, oh yeah, that's that guy who really likes teaching gym class. And he can give you the basics on a lot of things, but he's not terribly good at any of them compared to some. So I might say, okay, if you want to be a combat related character, you should really choose 1 or 2 max to be the things that you care about, as opposed to trying to care about all of them. Right? Dawncast for solars tend to fall into this because they have all the combat abilities under them, and sometimes I'll see players be like, okay, well, I just have to put a lot of dots in all these, and I'm like, no, you don't. You definitely don't. You can really specialize in 1 or 2 of them, and that's all you need. So that's what I would mention in terms of hand holding for players. But the core of the question, to finish with Eremetheus here, the core is, how much effort are you willing to put in, and how much effort is the player willing to put in? Because if you're both willing, then I don't think that there are very many systems that I would say, no, absolutely not, you should not do this. If you are interested, and the player is interested but expresses some concern, and you are willing to bridge the gap, fantastic, go for it. But understand what that gap is, and make sure that you are aware of how far you're willing to go to cross that gap, and how far the other player is willing to go to cross that gap. Because if they're not willing, then no, you should not play this game. Don't force a game that you know somebody is going to be miserable playing. But since they really liked Exalted when running with pre-made characters, I think that that's a pretty good indicator. And sure, barely engaging with charms, that can change. But only if you are also willing to say, I will help you with charms at the start. I will give you a list of charms that I think that will help you, or I will sit with you with the core and we'll go over the charms together, you and I, and we'll figure this out, and I will help you get all these together. Or I'm only going to give you 5 charms right at the start, get you settled in. You are newly exalted compared to the other characters. That would work too. That would absolutely work. So Flower of August, when you say interesting point specifically for the storyteller-based games, 2 dots is actually supposed to be like professional level, but it never really feels that way. So I agree, but that's because of the rankings being so wide. But it's also because that's part of the fantasy you want to sell, right? You know, like, yeah, this person's good at computers. They have technology too, but I am so good at computers. I have technology 5. That helps. But in Exalted, very specifically, if you can't meet requirements for charms, most of the power that rests in the Exalted, the thing that elevates them beyond mortals to demigod status, are charms. So if you don't have those 5s for charms later on, it gets really fucking rough if you don't have that. So that's why when I talk about optimization and saying you only have 1 dot in each of them, so you're kind of okay but not, you know, incredible, it means that you're gonna get the floor mopped with your body whenever you encounter anybody who's any kind of warrior, because they definitely will have more dots than you, for sure. And like Zavlika said, professionals don't deal with roll-worthy challenges all day, right? Like, if you're a blacksmith, you don't have to roll crafts. You can make horseshoes all day. You can make a standard sword all day. You want to make the best sword that this village has ever seen? Well, then you're going to have to roll. But even then, you can take your time, and you can probably create the best sword that that village has ever seen. Are you going to make Excalibur? Probably not. Because for that, you're going to need occult and lore. You're going to have to find the best materials, and those materials do not come cheap, and they come with side quests all on their own. And then you're going to need to forge on an anvil that has been crafted out of adamantium, and you're going to need the best tools for it. And you're going to need somebody to recite poetry while you're hammering this thing, because you're going to need that extra bit of confidence and boost. So remember that there's a huge difference between this is my job and I'm good at it to I am the best in the world. It's one of those things that people will look at when they're like, let's make a character, and the character is going to be me, and realizing that most mortals, in like a World of Darkness game, most mortals have a 2 in every attribute. Maybe they have 1 3, and they might have 1 1, and they will have like 7 ability dots sprinkled in there or something. And like the most that any of them are going to have in any one thing is probably 2, and that's it. And that's what they have. And they've got like 2 willpower, and that's it. Like that's, but like people look at that and they're like so disappointed because they're like, oh, I suck. No, you don't suck. It's just player characters are meant to be awesome. Because when you're role playing, part of it is a power fantasy. You want to be awesome. You want to be that much cooler than everybody else. So that's part of the reason why it sometimes feels bad when you're like, well, I'm a professional and I only have 2 dots in this thing. Like a pool of 4 or 5 is a massive pool for most things in the world. But most things aren't what adventurers have to deal with. So, when your universe hasn't invested portable music devices yet, you have to hire a bar to provide background music to hype you up while you create your masterpiece. Yeah, 100%. Most mortals have 0 in most ability dots. The average mortal rolls something like 2 to 3 dice. Yes, that is true. I named my Bound Demon musician Spotify. Perfect. No notes there. Absolutely 100% great. Love it. Mistrich also recommended something which I think is good. Start with only excellencies. I think that's a great way to start, to just help them to kind of understand, yeah, you're super cool, and here's how you can be super cool. You can just add dice because you spend a little bit of your inner power, and that gets them knowing things. And then when you see other players do wicked things like running over a crowd by just lightly stepping on all of their heads as you go along, that's something that you can do too. There's a ton of great information in there. I would recommend going into the Clinic Hours channel on the Discord and looking at that. I think that that's what I would do for a complicated game like that. And I have players in games that I've run who are absolutely surprised me by how much they manage to get and appreciate the game itself. And I've had games where I've realized the player's never going to put in that work, and I simplified them because I still enjoyed the game. And I've had games where I've had a player be like, I'm not interested in learning, and then I said, that's great, then you do not have to play. I had to do that for a couple of LARPs that I ran, where I was just like, look, I know that you want to play Mage the Ascension with us, but you need to have at least a decent understanding of what a paradigm is and how you can create magic. I don't need you to be perfect, but I need you to have a decent understanding. The person's like, that seems like too much work. And I said, okay, great, but then this isn't the game for you. And that's because I did not have time to handhold one player when I had 20 others that I had to deal with. So, you know, I just don't. So Exalted Essence as a bridge into EX3. Essence is designed to be lighter than Exalted 3rd Edition. It is not rules light. Exalted Essence is at least as complicated as the World of Darkness 5th Edition. At least, probably more so. If you really wanted somebody to get used to a storyteller system game, you should be playing Vampire or Werewolf, honestly. And then you can kind of branch on from there. Essence might be a little bit easier for some people compared to 3rd edition. It's especially the edition that I would recommend that people start with if you don't necessarily want to play a solar. Even if you want to play a solar, honestly, Essence might be a better idea because solars are sort of busted. I don't like their charm set as much in this game. Like, I love solars as characters, but like their charms are in some ways overpowered. Understanding the Mage book is the first step to Ascension. It very much is. The thing is, Mage can be a great game. I really do enjoy it. I also know that a lot of Mage is, for some people, is like just the philosophical discussions that come with it, and for some players, it's just not their bag. Figuring out how to create an effect, knowing like, okay, what spheres do I have access to, and how do I have the Arte to deal with it? Like, it's rough. Solars are supposed to be busted. I understand Kung Fu Vendors. I just mean that, like, if you're playing with a bunch of other people and you're playing a solar and they're playing something else, you should probably be playing Essence, because otherwise you're just going to be that much better than everybody. like damn. Yeah, they are busto. So that's kind of where I sit on this. Just make sure that you understand what you're getting into and make sure that they understand what they're getting into. And if you can come to an accord, you're good. I'm going to call it there. The DMake was actually done? Yeah. I'm going to call it there because it's dinner time and I would love to help out with dinner. So what I'm going to say here is we have coming up, if I look at the streams that we have coming up into what's going on, the next thing is Datafall, I believe. I don't believe that there's another stream. So Datafall is on Sunday. Remember that Datafall is 1 hour later than it usually is, so it will start at 3 p.m. Eastern, daylight time. So it's 1 hour later. It is not 2 hours. We said last stream that it might be 2 hours. It's actually only one, which means that we basically end right as Pinky Pact starts. So that's going to be that way for the next couple of weeks, just because we have some work that has interfered with our schedule. But we're doing that because we also don't want to step too much on Pinky Pact, because, like, honestly, you should be watching that shit. It's good stuff. So I actually don't know what I'm having. I have to go and look, but it might be pierogi. That seems like it might be good. So we kind of want to make sure that we're not stepping too hard on them. So that's what's happening on Sunday, 3 p.m. Eastern time. Check the Discord. It will have the time in your time zone, because that's part of the reason why we use Discord. But in the meantime, I know it's hard. I know that it's sometimes not easy. Sometimes the correct solution to your problem isn't just using your word hole. It's to normalize retcons. We'll see you next time. Actually, we're going to run the credits. I want to make sure that we run the credits. We have wonderful patrons, and they deserve to be seen and appreciated. Why are the credits not running? Oh no. Oh no! There it is! So I'm back. Any questions while we let the credits roll? Fake out! Our patrons are important here, and I really do want to make sure that we support them. So, yeah. My bad. Yeah, so dice rings. They do make great fidget toys. I'll say that much. They really do. And now the sun is shining like directly onto me, so now I have that kind of like angelic look coming out into the end. It was a lot of fun to run this with you. Oh, look, Conky's got my back. Just always on my back. I spent a lot of time outside today. It was magnificent weather. Magnificent weather. 131 to go. We'll get 1,000 subs, and then we can get emotes back for weirdness. And with that, I leave you.